Hello there, it's Mikaela Titheridge here from the Crafty Oink Pen, and I'm here to share my tip for partial embossing. It's a partial embossing with a slight difference in the fact that we're going to do as an aperture, as opposed to just perhaps a strip across the bottom or side or top of a card. So as you can see there, this center section hasn't been embossed at all. And the way in which you go about doing that is to create your own mask. These can be really fun to do because they can be whatever shape you want. So I did pop out a few kind of visual instructions, but it might be easier to see this actually being put together. So let me show you. So the first thing you want to do is to choose your aperture shape. So I, in this instance, went for an oval shape, which came from our framed florets dies. And I've taken some cardboard. It's thick, but it's not too thick. And it's kind of thin enough that this will just cut through. So I've just run one through already, but we want this to be, our mask to be two thicknesses. Now, if you went for a thicker cardstock, this just wouldn't cut through it. So by doing two thinner ones, you can tape them together and you're going to get the thickness that you require. So the cardboard that I'm using, I think comes from the our packs of possibly foil or certainly designer series paper. Specialty papers usually have a cardboard layer at the back. I often keep mine and make use of them, and this is one of the great reasons to do so. So I've cut two pieces of cardboard to the size of my card front. As I say, I've already run one through. So stacking these together, I'm going to set my die into that pre-cut aperture. And once that's nested, I'm going to take a pen, pencil. I should have probably done a pencil, then I could rub it out and reuse it. And then we can take away the front piece so that we're still down to one thin layer. And so now that can be ran through my cut and emboss machine. Do make sure that you keep this the correct way up. The way that I've just taken that off of there, I've set it to one side, because what you don't want is when you go to marry these two back up, you've turned it and it is fractionally out. You want them to be the same. So we're going to run this through our cut and emboss machine. So there we are. That has die cut, although it doesn't look like it's gone right the way through, and that's because of the thickness of it. Hence why we need to do two to stack them together. So I can just give that a gentle press out, and then I can bring these two back together. And because I've kept them the same way, they now marry up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape them together. Like so. Okay, I like this one, was the one that I used before, and now I can make use of these, and you can do all sorts of different shapes. Obviously slightly more intricate depending on your embossing folder, probably won't work as well. Now the other thing you want to do is keep a piece of tape at the top of this, because what you're going to do now is open up your embossing folder and pop your cardstock inside just as normal. Okay, now I'm making that central of this, lining this up over the top. I'm going to just tape that to the outside of my embossing folder. Now I can just turn it around and do a little cursory check. On the back, I can see that there's a little bit of a border around my white cardstock, and that will just ensure that that's sitting nice and centrally. And now I can run this through my cut and emboss machine, and what I want to use is I want to use plate 1. Then I want to pop my project in the embossing folder onto it next, and then I'm going to use plate 3. So just one cutting plate on the top, not underneath, and you're not using your normal embossing plate. It's just too thick. With the amount of cardboard you've got here, it's too thick. So you need to make use of a single cutting plate. Let me just run that through. Okay, so I've just run that through, and now we can open this up. We can take this off and save that for another occasion. And now you will see basically what happens. Where the cardboard is where it embosses. The pressure gets placed into this area here and not into this area. You could argue, could you not just die cut an oval shape and stick it on? You absolutely could, but it's just a really nice finish that the embossing folder just kind of bleeds into this section and isn't a harsh circle or oval or square or whatever your shape is. And it allows you to do as many or as few kind of gaps as you want and to be able to stamp within that. So let's pull this together as a card now. So I'm bringing in some Pool Party and a blending brush. So I'm just going to take a little bit off of that, and I'm going to do a little bit of blending in this space. This is just to add the tiniest little hue of colour to make it look like sky. So in time, this is going to go onto a smoky slate card base. So because I'm going to colour my images in using blends pens, I need to make use of black memento ink. So I'm going to stamp a balloon. An elephant, and then my sentiment is actually going to go straight onto my card. So if this were fully embossed, this wouldn't allow me to do that. So I'm now making use of our blends pens, alcohol-based pens, and I am going to just lay down some colour first, and now I'm using a darker yellow, which this is what we call our So Saffron. It's the softest of our yellows that we have, and I'm just leaving a kind of a highlighted point and adding a little bit more depth of colour to one side. Now for our cute little elephant, I've brought in smoky slate. So again, I'm going to lay down some colour first before I then start blending a little bit. So using my darker shade now, I'm just going to kind of add some shading where I think there would be, which is kind of around the edges a little bit, and then we will blend back over those edges. I'll add a little bit more. I'm still using the light smoky slate here because I feel that his head is casting shadow down here, but his head is in more of the daylight, so I don't want it to be too dark. So just by adding a second layer, it kind of will be enough. If you notice, I'm kind of putting some marks where all the marks have been put on this particular image by the designer of this cute little image. Now I've pulled in one of our flesh coloured, this particular one is SU1000. I actually genuinely can't remember what colour I used before, so this may not, you know, it might well have been this one. But I'm just going to add some little pink ears. It's so cute. Now I'm also bringing in some soft sea foam in both light and dark, and I'm literally going to do some scribbles. This is so that I can then die cut some grasses to go around, and I'm also going to use soft succulent, light and dark as well. So again, I think this one's slowly running out. I'll do what I can with it though. Well used, well loved. Now it doesn't matter if it's kind of looks slightly stripy or anything, because when I die cut this, they're grasses, so they're going to look actually more natural. So the pack of dies, I'm using the Elephant Parade bundle. The dies that come with this have got 2 grasses, so I can cut, I want 3 of each of these colours, and I'm going to do them that way round, so that it kind of, the darker colour is to the bottom of my die cut piece. And then I've got a die for my cute little elephant, and one also for my balloon. So we will get those die cut, and then we can assemble our card. So there we have all of our elements, and we can now start popping this together. So I'm going to take some of this crinkle ribbon, and I'm just going to pop this across my card and tape it in place behind, and across the front and tape it in place behind the other side. It then means that I can add a bow wherever I want to, and if I'm not happy, I can kind of slide it along to where I want it to go. So if you see, pop that in through there, and I will tie that in a bow once I've got that anchored onto my card. It's always easier when this has got some weight to hold it down. I'm going to pop my little cute elephant up on some dimensionals. Then I'm going to take some of these grasses, and I want them to just go, the darker ones to go across the back, and then he's going to kind of sit in between. So once I know where they are, they're going to go, I can get those in place. We will sort the balloon out on a dimensional, and I notice my little die hasn't quite picked up my string thread, so I'm just going to add one in by hand with a Stampin' Right marker. There we go. And as you can see, that's protruding out of that aperture. We will then use some mini dimensionals, tiny little foam pads. Then we will stick this down onto our card base. And tie this in a bow. And then finally, I'm just going to add a single little pearl heart, which are absolutely beautiful. I love these. And there we have it. That is the partial embossing that I shared, and where you're creating an aperture from a couple of pieces of cardboard that you can then store with your embossing folders and make use of time and time again with other embossing folders. I really hope you've enjoyed that. I hope I've inspired you to give it a go yourself, and I really look forward to seeing lots of your cards out there. Take care.